Joining me now is Kevin Hassett, Director of the National Economic Council. Kevin, so pleased to see you. Thanks for being here.
You too,
First of all, can you straighten out the word we're getting from our team as opposed to what the Chinese team is saying by anonymous sources, we should emphasize?
Mm-hmm. Well, the president was correct in what he said, of course, and the bottom line is that everybody wants this to move forward in a positive way, and I expect that there'll be lots of positive news to break on that soon. But the thing this weekend that I think is most interesting is that we've already had a week of meetings with virtually foreign ministers and finance ministers from every country.
Yes.
I've been literally lined up from morning to night with such meetings, as have Secretary Hassett, Secretary Lutnick, Jameson Greer, and so on. And now with the president going to Rome, one of the things we do at the White House is start to manage the bilateral meeting schedule for Rome.
Oh, yeah.
And I was looking at the list of countries that have offered to meet with the president, and it was single-spaced 3 pages.
Whoa!
And I'm serious. And so the point is that President Trump is a person that has rebooted the global trading system with his first tariff move, but he's also the guy who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. And what's going on now is the second stage, the Art of the Deal part, is happening. And what Secretary Hassett said in the Oval today is 100% an accurate read of what I'm getting from talks with more than 34 countries. I think we now have 18 written offers from countries for great trade deals so that put America workers first.
Well, and Kevin, what you're saying about the other countries coming to the table and offering, frankly, some surprising things about all this is very relevant to China, because that might move others in our favor to work against China. Not necessarily that you guys want to completely isolate China and take them out of world trade. I know you don't want to do that, but at the same time, here's what that European commissioner that Grady had an interview with earlier said about what to do, what happens with all of those Chinese goods that were meant for the U.S. that now are kind of stuck in limbo. What happens if they kind of dump them in Europeans' lap? Here's what he said to that. This is SOT number 3. Roll tape.
We would expect certain restraint from the Chinese side, because indeed, if we will now have a major flood of Chinese goods in the EU market with potentially destabilizing effects, we will have to defend our market, our companies, and our jobs.
So, Kevin, it looks like the EU has the same concerns about the Chinese dumping goods that we do. That is, we are coming to the table aligned with our other trading partners. I don't want to necessarily say against China, but forcing China to do the things that we want them to do.
Like, literally, we all want China and everybody else to join a community of nations that respects the rule of law, that respects each other's as trading partners, and treat each other with respect. And I can tell you that when you see how fast things are moving, then you must be thinking, oh, things are moving in a rush. But it's not actually true. That for example, with the EU commissioner that you just quoted, that we've met with him numerous times since the 20th of January to talk about the issues that we want to put on the table. And when President Trump announced the tariffs, that it was kind of like getting the opening whistle to the game that had already been planned very, very carefully. We all had our action plans ready. And so the reason why we can get so close to so many great trade deals is the leadership of the president, the leadership of Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer, but also the fact that we've been working really, really hard since the 20th with our friends in the EU and other countries, South Korea, to make sure that we were ready when the game began.
And again, it's that balance. You talked about it in your book, the book that you wrote about the first Trump term. It's that balance of advisors that he has. Some are very hardcore in the tariff issues. Others are more free trade, but he gets those people working together, discussing, arguing, trading off, and comes to these conclusions, one of which, by the way, really hasn't been mentioned much. And again, the same EU commissioner who, by the way, used to be the head of the EU for trade. He now has a different title concerning economics. But here's what he said about a possible bonus to these trade negotiations. Roll that tape. That's number 1.
So actually, we already put some ideas on the table. For example, possibilities of purchasing more U.S. LNG and, in general, more cooperation in the field of energy. Also, as regards industrial goods, we came with a proposal of having actually zero for zero tariffs, so not to put tariffs against each other at all.
So I do not want to be Pollyannish about this because anything could happen. But you see what happened with the market today with the comments by that EU commissioner and others. I mean, the fact that our LNG exports, we may finally be doing what you guys wanted to do in the first term but didn't have time to do, really open up the European ports. That would sort of dislodge Russia in its dominance of EU for natural gas. I mean, there are all kinds of bonuses. Plus, as he said, working towards that zero tariff rate, which is the absolute opposite of tariffs.
Right. Well, in the end, President Trump recognizes, as we all do, that we're going to get a lot of tariff revenue, and it's going to help us balance the budget. And if people want to avoid the tariffs, then if they onshore production in the U.S., then we'll get tax revenue from that. And so this is a very fiscally sound move that we're making. And again, we're bringing everybody to the table. The way I like to think about it is imagine the relationships that we had, the trading relationships and international relationships that we had 6 months ago, and then imagine what they're going to look like a year from now. And of course, they're going to be radically better for us and better for them, better for the American worker, better for real wages, for economic growth, and so on. And so, of course, markets should be celebrating these moves.
Kevin, there's something else that the president said over the past 24 hours, which I think had a part to play in the market move today, the dramatic move upward or continuing move upward from previous days' gains. Which dealt with the whole tax issue, because as you well know, there were some Republicans who were suggesting that the way to get a tax deal was to raise taxes on the highest marginal rate, whether it was a corporate tax or the highest marginal rate on personal income, which of course would hit a lot of small businesses in this country. The president was definitive about not accepting that. I want to roll tape of that and get your reaction. Roll it.
Would you support a millionaire tax?
I think it would be very disruptive because a lot of the millionaires would leave the country. And other countries that have done it have lost a lot of people. They lose their wealthy people. That would be bad because the wealthy people pay the tax.
And Kevin, the sound you heard in the background when he said that was Larry Kudlow screaming for joy, and a lot of others of us supply-siders who were so happy to hear that. The raising the marginal tax rate is about the worst possible thing you could do for growth in this country. Don't you agree?
Yeah, the president is an America First person who understands that you put the workers first, and one way to put workers first is to make sure that they have jobs that they can get. And the thing I got to say, though, is that the president, it's underestimated how analytical he is and how much analysis he demands of all the staff here in the White House. And so when you're murder board what Congress might do from going back to January 20th, then you could imagine somebody would have said, well, how much revenue would you get if you did do this tax or that tax? And then before you know it, sometimes in the White House, something that is just like a hypothetical that could happen if somebody on the Hill did it to you becomes something that the White House is considering or so on. And that happens all the time. And the president was right to put the kibosh on that. But, of course, our job is to analyze things and to subject them to analysis and to be ready with hard numbers should the eventuality occur that we got to think about that thing.
What about not only the extensions, keeping rates the same way they are, but extending them? The pro-growth elimination of tax on overtime pay, for example, something that really incentivizes harder work and more growth. Is that going to be in the package?
Yes, 100%. In fact, we've got the next Big Six meeting that the White House negotiates with the Hill next week, where Secretary Bessent and I are going to be presenting a list of the president's top priorities to make sure that they make it into the bill. And I can tell you that I've never, ever seen a tax bill move so efficiently, positively forward. And I'm highly, highly confident that we're going to have a great, big, beautiful bill and that it's going to be law, well before the 4th of July.
And even including reconciliation between the SALT tax Republicans, so those who want to increase the deduction for that.
Yeah, in fact, the president's plan is fitting together perfectly with what people are doing in the House and the Senate. There'll be a few pieces to move left and right between now and the finish line, but there's broad agreement on the Hill and in the White House that the president's plan for taxes is a sound one and one that'll be great for the American people. And that's why there's so much political support for it on the Hill.
Well, at least this week, the markets agree with you, Kevin, with all your optimism.
Well, they should.
And
well, wait till they see the tax bill, I can tell you.
I mean, I remember, obviously you're selling your boss's plan, but at the same time, you're not a Pollyannish prognosticator by any means. I've seen you be.
I'm a worrier, in fact, as you know.
You are a worrier. I wasn't going to
Yes.
say that, but that's exactly what you are. So good news from the White House. Kevin, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great to be here, David.
Kevin Hassett.